turn to another scripture. Of course, Mrs. Davis is ready for us to just quit altogether. Hebrews chapter, this is one Miss Davis doesn't like anyway. Chapter 5, please. Now, remember, the subject of everything is the flesh, the sarx. That's what we're talking about. And the last verses were our victory, the Lord's victory, and what we've been given through him and in him. But now we're going to talk some more about his victory over the flesh. Verse 7, Miss Davis, please.
In the days of his flesh, he offered up prayers and supplications with loud crying and tears to the one able to save him out of death, is the literal. And he was heard because of his piety. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from the things he suffered. How far did you want me to read?
That's good.
Okay.
Did you want to go further?
Having been made complete, we are complete in him. He became to all those who hearken to him the source of eternal salvation.
Yeah. Who hearken to him, not to the traditions of men, not to what, I mean, how could you, what in the world in a normal Sunday morning service are you going to do with the verses that we just looked at in Colossians chapter 2? I mean, everybody knows it's about going to church, and everybody knows when you go on Sunday morning, the coffee better be good, and I want a donut. Really? Something as amazing as what we just read, and we've got to be concerned about donut and making sure that the show is going on and the worship band is really practiced up and doing well and blah, blah, blah. To these verses, in the days of his flesh, D-A-Y-S, days. Okay? This is not talking about in the Garden of Gethsemane, although that was part of it. But it was in the days of his sarx. In other words, first, it's his sarx, and he had days with it, which would have been his life. He was like us. Again, I can't say it enough. Jesus was a man. If you do not believe that, then you do not get the amazing thing that Christ has done for you. You don't get it. He came as a man. Was he filled with the Spirit of God? Yes. But his death, his resurrection, his ascension with you has given you the exact power that Jesus Christ had when he walked upon this earth, that we did not have before that time, because man was fully separated from God. He was dead in his transgressions. He was dead in the uncircumcision of his heart. You were dead. And Jesus, incredibly, the cure for your death was to get you killed further. And so to get you killed, he died, and you died with him. But he came with a flesh, a sarx, just like ours. Otherwise, I am here to tell you, it doesn't count. If he did not come with the flesh, he was not tempted like you. If he did not come with the flesh, it's not that he was without sin. He was a metal robot who was not capable of sinning. That doesn't count. He's not like you. He was completely like you, completely. And in every way was tempted in exactly the same way. If he doesn't have a sarx, the thing that says, I'm in control, I know what I'm doing, I can be good, I'll be like God, Remember those temptations in your life? The way that you act at different times? As a judge, as the jury, as the hangman, as whatever it is that you do, and yet that we're doing it all by the Sarx. But Jesus in his Sarx, in the days of his Sarx, did not sin, but the reason he did not is because he knew that to be like God was not a thing to be grasped. It was something that had to be given by God. And that gift was not, I'll make you like God. The gift was, I'll give you me. And that's what Jesus did. In the days of his flesh, he offered up both prayers and supplications with loud crying, tears to the one who was able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his piety. Wait a second. I thought he died. Well, he did. He was not saved from physical death. He was saved from the separation from life. He was saved from separation from his Father. Oh, he was sin. I mean, I understand that people say that God could not look on him. I know that. I'm just not necessarily a fan of it, but we're not discussing that right now. The fact is that eventually, because he became guilty of all things, he became sin. He became iniquity. He became transgression. Why? Because I was in him. And he was nailed to the cross. The guilty was transferred to him. God, and it's interesting how Jesus, how he died, it said, and he gave up his breath. He gave up his breath. No one is going to take my life from me. Remember him saying that? He was nailed up on that cross, but he is the one that chose when to die. And he was not saved not just by the resurrection, but he was saved in the life then from that. He was saved in the life that he lived upon this earth, in the days of his flesh. How was he saved? He didn't sin. Do you understand? In the days of his flesh, I mean, one of the big reasons that you and I sin is because of our flesh. And Jesus didn't walk that way. He didn't walk in the power of his flesh. He walked in the power of the Spirit of God filling that flesh the way it was designed to do from the very beginning. He saved us and from the second death, in that he has already been raised from the dead to new life. Miss Davis, what do you have to say on this?
Just that, what you were saying, that he was saved out of death. I think it's interesting. How many times have you cried or offered supplications with groanings to the Lord to be saved out of death? All of us have at different times. Lord, help me in this, help me. And he identified with us fully in that. He walked as Adam was supposed to. He suffered under the same pressures that we've suffered under. Yet without sin, he stayed true to the course. He didn't miss the goal, which was God and his Father. And he walked that. And he, all the days of his flesh, he offered up tears with loud groanings, prayers and supplications with tears and loud groanings to him who is able to save him out of death. And he is heard because of his right focused piety. He was looking to his Father to keep him. It says, there's one of the verses in Psalm, he keeps our soul in life. I think it's in the Psalms, but he kept his soul in life because he was focused on the Father to keep him. We've talked lately about God being the defense of our life. Jesus walked that. Our Father wants us to walk that as well. Jesus living in us, our trust being fully in God to be the defense of our life. And Jesus walked, yielding his flesh, saying no to his flesh to preserve his life at any time, for any reason. He said no. And because of that, he has a name that's been given, and he's been highly exalted above every name. Mm-hmm. He humbled himself, even to death, but even death on a cross. So that daily dying, no, I can't, I'm not going to trust in myself. I'm tempted. He's tempted in everything like we are to deliver ourselves. And Pilate, amazed when he didn't respond, he didn't defend himself. It says Pilate marveled at that. And he didn't, because he was cast fully. It says that in Psalm 22, which is the one, my God, why have you forsaken me? It says, I was cast from my mother's womb upon you. You've caused me to trust. And he was looking to the Father and stayed faithful to look to the Father. And that's such a wonderful, I love those verses because he listened through the suffering. And there was a completeness and a complete working of that listening to his Father that had to be worked in his life. And that's the same for us, a complete separating and listening up under that he's working in all of our lives to hear, to listen. And
That's right.
Anyway.
I think again, we've been talking about this all night, but it's just incredibly sad that we've been given, here's the way, walk in it. And there's so many things that are put in the way for us to believe it, for us to go, I should be walking in that. I can look at those verses and go, wait a second, that's true. But I'm a long way from fully receiving it. Because I've truly been taught, oh, no, don't think that way. No. Jesus was God, and he walked here so differently from us. And you must not bring him down to our level. Of course, I'm not. He did. One last thing we want to talk about tonight, and we'll stop there, but let's turn in the same book, Hebrews again. Hebrews chapter 10. Miss Davis, will you read verse 20, please?
By a new and living way which he inaugurated for us through the veil that is his flesh.
Okay. Where does that sentence start so we can get the...
Since therefore, brethren, we have confidence to enter the holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way which he inaugurated for us through his flesh, through the veil that is his flesh.
Okay.
Is that where you...
Yeah, that's good. Do y'all remember me fairly recently saying that you started in Exodus chapter 20 and all of the book of Leviticus, it's talking about Jesus Christ. Wow, look at Paul here. And what's he saying? That the veil, the very veil into the Holy of Holies, is his flesh. And it's a new and living way. The veil now is that we walk through. And I find this fascinating with the picture that it's talking about. First, it's a living veil, okay? So the veil would be there, and you step into that, and getting past the veil, you step into the Holy of Holies. There is the ark of the covenant, the propitiation covering lid over authority, the law, provision, the bread coming down out of heaven, and you're stepping into that. This is the place where you truly meet God. You're getting into the inner sanctuary. Well, think about the picture. His flesh is the veil to the true inner sanctuary, the closeness that you can have getting to God. Well, wouldn't that make sense? Yes, John.
Am I confused in reading it? It seems like it's saying that his flesh isn't the veil, but it's the way through the veil. As in, it's like it's like the hole through the veil, rather than being the veil itself.
A new and living way in which he operates.
It would be the same thing, but it's not the veil itself. So
You're saying it's the new and living way.
yes, it would be like a hole through the veil.
I'll have to think about it. You may be right. But I'm going to talk about it the way that I'm. Anyway.
I think it equates to the same.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But it's still, it's the way.
Yeah.
Now, going with my picture before I was rudely interrupted by John. Remember the flesh, we've talked about the flesh a lot. The flesh is the thing that God put in us and said, oh, this is very good. Remember, it was in us and it was a waiting, living thing, but waiting for what? What did it need to be alive? It needed the Spirit of God. It's the thing in us, the receptacle for God. Now, I know you can't just put, but God has made it clear. It's not, I'm not going to be living in stones and wood. I'm going to be living in people. Now, what's cool is that the new and living way through the veil, and which is his flesh, we gain, if there's ever been a picture of this, that we gain in the at-one-ment, in covenant, we gain Jesus's flesh. Okay? We gain that flesh. We got a new soft sarx in us. And that sarx, that veil, is filled with God. I mean, it's a beautiful picture of the Holy of Holies. You're getting into the very presence of God. Well, how did you get there? Well, now, if we stop and do the picture of what the flesh is, the flesh is the place in us that it's not that we go into God, it's that God comes into us. Okay? In this case, the flesh is there, and when we enter the new and living way into that presence, it's the flesh of Jesus, which is holding what? Remember, in him dwells the what? The fullness of deity. And so when we are going in this new and living way in through that flesh, we are going and gaining the very flesh of Jesus Christ. See, all the promises were made to him, not to us. But when you get him, you get all the promises. You get all the Spirit. You get everything. That makes sense? And I think the picture is the one of saying, this is the way, the deepest knowing of God, not knowledge about, but knowing of God, is this picture that we're being given here. That we literally have the Spirit of God. And you have, I want to bring up something here. We have access through the new and living way to the very Spirit of God and the fullness of deity and us being made complete. All of these things that we talk about, we have access to the Spirit and all of the power of the universe. We have access to that. But when you stop and you think what Jesus did with that power, what Jesus, maybe we should say what he did not do. What Jesus did not do was say, Satan, I'm frying you right now. He didn't go, you know what? Trump has got to win the election. We've got to get the Democrats out of there, and it's going to be a landslide, and we're only going to have Republicans in everything. We're going to have chocolate pie every other day and coconut pie on those other days. cherry pie will get in there from time to time. The difference between my Sarx and Yeshua's was he didn't live for himself. See, this is the difference between what he received the Lord or the Spirit for, the power over himself, which we're going to talk about in the next session.